Ladies and gentlemen, I'm thrilled to be talking to Dr. Haley Perlis today. She's a sports psychologist and a high-level coach, but she also does stuff on her own. I mean, I know you're a pretty serious cyclist, and it turns out that you're actually a jet fighter pilot too.
Passenger, a
Oh,
jet
come
fighter
on.
passenger. Yes, that
What was
that
that
is
like?
correct. That was a very neat day for my boyfriend's 50th birthday. All he wanted for his birthday was to be Top Gun. So we got in these jets. Didn't never knew the passenger, or sorry, I'm the passenger. Didn't know the pilot until the moment, and he gave me a quick little tutorial. And right in front of you are your ejection, right? Like, so you're staring at them the whole time, but don't go near them unless you actually need them. So it was an interesting thing looking at them, but also trying not to see them so that I can enjoy the ride. But I too, I just love the roller coasters. So the aerials and looking over, and we're literally going, I don't know how fast, but waving to my boyfriend as we're kind of going like this together. That was a cool adventure.
Well, I mean, we're going off topic already, but I don't care. I'm not a huge aviation fan, so what were you flying, and where was this? And tell me more.
Sure, it was in the States. So we flew, I live in Colorado. We flew to Texas, got on these planes, an L-37, they're like trainer jets. And then L-27, L-37, and then um, three stops later, so they just kind of dropped us right back, literally 20 minutes from our home. It
Oh,
was,
wow.
yeah, it was, it was, it was amazing. It was incredible. And I love it, but I love all adventures. It is one of my greatest values is you're an adventurer. Love, health, and adventure are my three top values in life. So if ever an opportunity comes, unless I really have to say no, I'm going to say yes. I want the experience.
Is that when you do your coaching, is that where you start with? How important are the values, the core values of the person when you're trying to help them get better at their sport?
Sure, it's a great question. It is one of the things that, and I think the what makes us our greatest self, tackling those three things, really important because as you know, things don't always go your way. Times get tough, and we need to, in the moment, answer the question, why am I doing this? Why am I here? And your values and your best self, what you want to grow inside, what you want to continue to shine, those three things are typically what motivates me to get back up or to keep going. And that is definitely one of the tools that I share with everyone that I work with.
Everybody going through anything difficult at some point is going to have a dark night of the soul, whether it's in a tent out in the Arctic tundra going, I'm never going to finish this frickin' trip, or in a sport, in a team sports environment, I'm going to let the team down. I'm not feeling sharp. I missed the last three goals, whatever it is. Uh, and can you give me an example of how those values or the person's core values can help bring them out of that funk and help them through that dark night of the soul?
I believe it allows us to tune in to the tactics and the techniques and the strategy that's going to let us crawl out instead of sinking further back in, mistake after mistake after mistake. Wait a second, I'm going to grab onto one of my strengths that I trust that can always get better, but I know I'm good at. And that allows you to mentally zone into that, which then also automatically tunes out the unnecessary, the irrelevant, the things that are just hurting us. And then physically, it also directs our nature, or sorry, directs our physical body towards the very thing that's going to help us, make some momentum forward instead of getting further and further in the quicksand of misery.
Hmm. So you're kind of talking about a cascade of negative thinking and then negative consequences beginning to pile up. Is that?
Yeah, you spiral out of control. I know I do.
Hmm.
So what stops that spiraling is being able to say, wait a second, these are my values, so let me choose my actions according to my values. And or these are my strengths. So which of my strengths can I grab onto right now and focus on that and execute that and get me back on the path of some success?
So I'll start with a question that I was just talking about the other day with Mike McCassell, who's an extreme endurance athlete. And he was talking about the idea that your body can't distinguish between different kinds of stress. Mental stress, physical stress, emotional stress, they're all very interlinked, and that your body's not really very good at telling the difference. Do you agree with that proposition, or do you think that physical stress is somehow different from emotional stress and mental stress?
No, stress is stress. We all, some people may feel it more in their stomach. Their stomach gets a knot. Some people only feel it more in their throat. It's like they're strangling. Some people can't focus in at all. So it's such a broad. Other people only focus on tunnel vision. They can't see anything. So, but stress in and of itself is a non, it's non, there's no
Specific?
real specific way. Yeah, non-specific experience. However, when that stress is more like anxiety, fear, frustration, worry, anger, now those things actually can propel us initially, like fight or flight, right? Like they can propel us to fight, they can propel us to survive. But when we sit in it long term, that energy gets stuck in our body. It's called bracing. So that's where there's a difference, because if we turn that fear, when it's no longer serving us, into a challenge, which basically anxiety now becomes arousal, that arousal, that's energy that can flow through freely. And then we can use that energy to perform. It's not stuck. And there I see a difference in stress, whether it's eustress or distress, which is another way that we use it. What we do with it, what we do with that energy can look different.
You talked about distress. I'm assuming eustress is EU stress. Can you distinguish between those two things, please?
Yeah. So distress is the stress that would make you run away, when you don't really need to, when you do have the ability to stand up and show up. But it's the stress that actually debilitates performance, whereas eustress facilitates performance. So if you're studying, right, the distress, I've got an exam the next day, or I've got a big meeting the next day, or I've got a big competition the next day, you kind of freeze and you brace. That's distress. That's not helping you. But when you use that energy, that you use that a little bit of fear, nervousness, excitement, challenge, and you zone in and you get prepared, that's eustress. Good stress.
So then what would be the steps to reframe that? I'm assuming distress can be turned into eustress in most cases. How specifically would you go about doing that if you're working with an athlete?
I like to bring back the confidence. So anxiety is quite often matched with doubt. And again, a little bit of fear, a little bit of frustration, a little bit of worry, a little bit of anger for some people actually is beneficial. It's motivating, it's self-awareness, it's igniting. But long term, when all you see is the fear, all you see is what could go wrong, that is matched with doubt. And then the other type, the eustress, arousal, nervousness, excitement, that's challenge, that's passion, that's alignment, that's competence. The doubt is actually not there. It's matched with confidence. So if we can bring back, for example, what I have control over in this moment, where I can shine, what my strengths are, what I trust, if we can bring that into the conversation in our self-talk, that is a very good way of turning the fear into a challenge.
So I'm going somewhere with this. I'm assuming most of your coaching clients are in sort of traditional sports. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, Stephan, you said traditional sports. Literally, we just discovered pillow fighting as a
Oh,
televised sport. So my mind just went to like, yes, I haven't worked with any pillow fighters just yet.
fair, fair. It's a growing. It'll be the pickleball of 2026, I'm sure.
It's growing, and my goodness, it's fierce too. But yes, yes, traditional sports. Yes.
Yeah. The reason I ask is because when I read sports psychology books, a lot of them sort of focus on, you know, learning to deal with and dispel anxiety and doubt or try and rechannel it. But the more dangerous a sport becomes, I think you can't really rule that out. I mean, it's the difference between tennis. You're unlikely to die in a tennis game. But if you're climbing K2 or you're doing the north face of the Eiger, you actually could very well die, and there's many people who've died. I suppose it's also the difference between MMA and golf, right? If you're unlikely to die in the cage, that has happened though, but the odds of getting permanently injured for life, brain damage, that's pretty real. So distinguishing between sports where injury is maybe social, right? Oh, what a chump. He lost, this year's Grand Slam. I knew he was finished. There's a social and perhaps a financial and an ego injury. But again, the odds of you being dead at the end of your tennis match are pretty slim. So then how does calibrating the right amount of doubt and fear come into the sport?
That's a great question. And when you said traditional, I work with quite a few extreme sport athletes, motocross athletes, divers, aerialists, so people that they're not just risking a gold medal or a podium, they're risking their life. And the fear is real, but you develop a relationship with the fear, and the relationship with the fear is not my athlete, but I'll never forget watching like a Red Cliff diving documentary. Oh my God, these divers are and they don't even get to practice at this particular event. No, they show up and they're going to jump off like these amazing, amazing like buildings or cliffs all over the world. And they really don't get maybe one practice dive because that's not where they practice. And so one athlete in particular says that the fear is not going to go away, so he befriends his fear. I get used to it. I get the fear is coming along, whether I like it or not. But even that in and of itself minimizes the negative effect fear can have on us, the negative bad effect. Because I said, sometimes fear actually is a good thing. It propels us, it makes us think, it gets the job done. And so it's not you do have to develop a relationship with your fear. You do have to also accept the risk. I mean, acceptance, and I don't mean, you're right. So like when I work with a tennis player, it is different than like a motocross athlete. A tennis player, sure, could be risking injury, but a motocross athlete is risking life. Very seldom are you risking your life on a tennis court. And so for a particular motocross athlete that I was working with, he had broken 27 bones in 3 years. And he came to me because he had broken his shin bone. His doctor said that he could ride again, but in his head, he could walk again because it had been 6 weeks. To him, that meant he could ride again, but he mentally could not get back on the bike because he was afraid of that 28th break or worse. So the first thing that we need to do is exactly what you're talking about. I can't tell him what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and you've already broken 27. You're not going to break a 28th. I mean, he's not going to buy into that. He'll find someone else. So what we needed to do was accept the risk. And it wasn't give up. There's nothing I can do about it, so I just accept it. No, it was accept with courage, accept with steadfastness, and understand that every time he shows up to get on that bike and compete, he's probably going to feel some fear. It's okay. It's part of the gig. It's part of this sport that I chose. And then in his words, just the acceptance piece shrunk that fear a little bit. And then what we did is we replaced it with his greatest strengths. What are your strengths? And for him, we were particularly working on the backflip, doing a backflip on his motorcycle. And he said, pulling up on the handlebars. I know that I've got that. I've got really good feel, like those, the grips in my hands. That's where I have a connection with my bike. So if I focus on pulling up on the handlebars, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen, and I increase the probability that I will land. And while he was talking about pulling up on the handlebars, his fear that he already accepted, he says, went on mute. So it's accept the risk, which there are many in such sports like that, or, climbing, and then taking action on your strengths. And not only did he get back on his bike and land that back flip, within 6 months, he was the youngest athlete to qualify for X Games. And so I do.
And he already had 27 breaks.
Already 27 breaks. Unfortunately, what actually pushed him out of his sport was he had this type of asthma that he had some nose surgery, but then he actually couldn't increase his heart rate, couldn't increase his cardiovascular while being outside, and that forced him out of his sport. But he went through all of this stuff, and the mental toughness, that, I mean, it worked for him. And it's not dismissing the anxiety, because you're right, it's there. I mean, this is a real anxious sport. But just by accepting it and then focusing on your strengths can turn that fear into more of a challenge where it becomes that eustress.
The question of knowing when to quit is such a difficult problem. You talk to entrepreneurs, man, I've been working on my business. I'm going to make the Uber of dog walking, or the skip the dishes of photo delivery, whatever it is. That's a dumb example, but it'll serve. And it's just not been working. I've sunk years of my life into this. I sank all my savings. If I just keep going, is it going to work, or should I quit? Athletes go through this all the time. Last year I was on an expedition that I had planned for a couple of years, and things weren't breaking my way. And I had wanted to do this very poorly described river. I think it was, there was an account of somebody who paddled it in the 1800s. It was a missionary looking for Inuit to convert, and basically didn't find any. So the only description of the river is, no Inuit, stupid river. I don't like it here. So, but in terms of like knowing what was on it, there was very, very little information, and things weren't breaking my way. I was behind schedule. I decided I was in the wrong boat, and I had to do the equivalent of, going a different way. And it's so difficult to know when to quit an endeavor, when to quit a career. How do you bring clarity to the, how do you support your clients being quitters?
That is a question I've never been asked in that way.
Really?
How do you support your clients from being quitters? I mean, in a
No,
roundabout way,
being
but the way
quitters.
of
Being
being
quitters.
quitters. Yeah.
Because there is a time to do that.
Yeah. There is. And so, first of all, I don't, I hope I can say this. I don't play God, so I don't make those decisions. I can't possibly make those decisions, but I can certainly, help a client investigate. I can certainly help a client really look at things. And when they do leave, which I think is different than quitting. So, I do want to make that difference, because it is not the same.
So
Quitting.
you're already beginning to reframe it right there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we do look at it, and then, what it takes. And first of all, there's a couple of things, and this has some difference of opinions. So when your whole identity is wrapped up in your career, or your whole identity is wrapped up in your sport, or your whole identity is wrapped up in a role, because to me, that's what a sport is. That's what a career is. That's what being a parent is. Those are roles. And roles come and they go. And sometimes we choose when they come and go. And sometimes we do not get to choose when they come and go. So that's why I always went right back to the beginning. Values and my best self, my best attributes, my best characters. That's my identity. And I apply that to various roles, so that when and if I do have to leave something that I don't want to leave, I mean, that's happened to me for sure in my sport. I can share this story though, while I was okay with leaving my sport, but maybe relationships or certain careers, if everyone's, lost a job or decided to leave their job. When your identity is not wrapped around that, it's not easy. It's still heartbreaking. It is still absolutely heartbreaking, but you save your sense of self, because you didn't leave your sense of self behind. You left that role behind. So that's one thing that's really, really important. But it is heartbreaking when you are forced to leave something that you really so desperately have worked so hard and prepared for. And this may be your last shot. And even if it isn't your last shot, do you really want to go through all the turmoil to go and give it again? I mean, it is heartbreaking. So we've got to let those emotions out. We have got to grieve. It's grief. It's grieving. And the only way to get through it is to grieve, so that you can then get up. I'll never forget a lesson my father said to me. I was going through a real difficult time, and he looked at me and he said, cry, so that you can then get up. because you're not going to be able to stand tall if you first don't cry.
Yeah, I think the idea of grieving is legitimate. And it takes us back to the very first thing we talked about with values. So if I was a motocross athlete or an MMA fighter and we were talking about values, my value couldn't be I'm the best motocrosser out there. I'm
Yeah.
suspecting you would call me on that.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would. What is it that you love? Well, can I ask you? I mean, you chose, actually, you and I are the same. 12, I think you chose your passion at 12 years old. I did too. 12 is a magic number for us, but you know, what did you bring to jiu-jitsu? What did you discover about yourself in jiu-jitsu, both in competition, but also in teaching?
It's definitely changed over the years. I mean, initially, uh, it's a teenage or young male power fantasy, right? You want to be able to defend yourself. You want esteem in the eyes of your peers. You want to have secret knowledge that nobody else has. You could do a lot of things if you were a real ninja. If you could really, truly disappear and then climb that building, it would be about as close as you could be to a superhero. And who doesn't want to be a superhero? So I would like to think over the subsequent 4 decades that my relationship to that has changed just a little bit. There is a strong, social component actually, right? That now that I would have never really identified as important earlier, and a kind of mental and physical challenge. So it changes and it evolves, and that's okay. And I actually never struggled with that evolving. I think I struggled with stopping competing, but that's something that every competitor struggles with
Right,
across the board.
right. But nothing, Stefan, nothing that you mentioned there had anything to do with it's just amazing when my leg is wrapped around this person's leg or my hand. It was all about things that you can actually transfer into something else. So when I work with people who are leaving, have to leave, first we got to deal with the heartbreak. We've got to grieve. That is a huge loss. Even if you chose it, it can still be a loss. And then it's okay, what did we discover about ourselves through that activity? And again, most often athletes don't say, "Oh my goodness, I just love what did you love most about your sport? The smell of the ball or the a lot of people actually say that I love the sound of the engine or the smell or but it's more about camaraderie. It's both more about social, it's more about discipline. I mean, how much discipline did you learn through your fighting years and your teaching years? And that then, okay, that is myself. That's my identity. And then where am I going to bring that to my next role? What role can I bring that to? And that kind of like shines a light, makes things a little bit more exciting. Gives some people something, even though I know it's not perfect, it's not amazing because you still have a loss, but it's something to look forward to. It's something to start planning, some vision to start walking towards.
Yeah. I mean, I think also it's a very real thing, at least in MMA and jiu-jitsu to some extent. A lot of these guys don't have any other education. So a lot of them end up fighting way beyond when they should have quit objectively from the outside world. Sorry, left. Way beyond,
Okay, that's
and
okay.
way beyond when they know that they should have left. But it's just purely at that point a financial thing, and to some extent an addiction to the adrenaline thing, right? The addiction to the spotlight, being able to walk into the club and everyone knows who you are because you were on TV. Girls and money and fame, they're pretty potent drugs. I'm not sure those are values, but those are pretty strong incentives to try and stay in the limelight. And, it's one thing to try and stay in the limelight if you're playing tennis again, or even doing jujitsu. But when staying in the limelight means you're going to be taking heavy shots to the head, or in the case of an aged by aged motocross athlete, I mean somebody who's 25, the miles begin to add up and the concussions begin to add up. And the brain damage is different from the damage to the rest of the body, I think.
100%. No, I totally agree with you. But then again, if you are like if you're listening right now and you are part of you says, logically says, you've passed your prime. Now you're just hurting yourself. You may not have other education, but this has been a tremendous education, and you do have skills that are transferable. And so my job is to help you identify those skills, not teach you them. You already have them. Identify them, and then be curious to other ways to get it. The girls and the money, that's ego. And so I want to balance. I get it. I like my trophies too. However, I see my trophies. It's not necessarily girls and money, but I have trophies too.
Wow, this conversation's gone sideways even more.
But I have my trophies too, but I need to balance them out with my heart. And then that's lasting motivation. That's sustainable motivation. That's having the ability to cross domains, to leave one when it's not healthy for you, and to pursue something else with the amazing education that you have had, even though it may not look like other people's education. You still have a lot to give, and still have a lot to learn.
So let's get back to actually athletes who are actually in training for something, as opposed to those on their way out the door, choosing to go out the door. It seems to me that there are athletes who sometimes find it difficult to train, and then there are other athletes who are difficult to restrain from training. They're the rugby athletes who go to a full workout in some kind of camp, and then they'll sneak out at night and do more work and grind their bodies down. And you kind of need different sets of skills. One is to get somebody up off their ass to go do the training, to go do the hard work to get ready for competition. And the other is to dial somebody down so that they're not perpetually overtrained all the time. How do you help people navigate that?
Yeah, you're right. They're two totally different things. And the one who won't stop, just go, 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 and sneaks out and figures out ways, they're the ones that have this, perhaps they may have an addiction. I mean, there is such thing as an exercise addiction, right? So they may just have an addictive personality and they're addicted to this. They also may be they have this story that more is always better. Now, those are two different things. On one, the more is better. We need to reframe that story with proof, that with evidence. And so, I could share all the science and share with this athlete, look, when you take recovery breaks, look, performance increases, but they may or may not buy it. And most often they won't buy it. So I then challenge them, just for a day, just for a week, let's just dip our toe in this thing we call recovery. Let's just dip our toe in this thing we call sleep. There's a reason why athletes are endorsing mattresses, right? Because, and you see professional athletes carrying pillows, with them because they need their sleep. The sleep is the next performance enhancement drug. So don't believe the research, don't believe what I'm saying, but will you buy into it just a little bit and take on the challenge, and let's see how your performance is when you recover for a day, when you sleep a full 8 to 10 hours, when let's just test the theory for yourself and see. And the first thing that I actually ask them is not if their performance improves. The first thing I ask them is that they absolutely sacrifice their performance by taking a recovery break. That's the better question to ask, because they may not see the improvement right away, but they will understand, yeah, my performance didn't suffer because I took a recovery break. And then they start to buy into it. So that's that. The addiction, you have to treat it like an addiction. If someone's addicted to exercise, that's a whole different way. You have to treat it like you're addicted to anything. And often there's diving into the foundation of that addiction, why it started, where it started. Sometimes you want to replace it with another behavior that's less hurtful, because you can't just stop. That's even more stressful. So, the ability to figure out and manipulate. For someone who's not motivated and all they want to do is compete, but they don't want to do the work, some of those people actually have, very popular term is growth mindset. They don't have a growth mindset. They have a fixed mindset. And they don't necessarily believe that conditioning is going to help, possibly. It just is what it is. I either have it or I don't. And by not training, they give themselves a perfect excuse for not doing well in competition.
Mm.
It's a way out. So that's just one example, but there's many. Like I really don't want to pigeonhole people. Other people who lack motivation is because they don't love training and they want to love it. Well, listen, you may love your sport. You may love your sport, but it doesn't mean that you have to love every aspect of your sport. And sometimes you gotta go, you gotta show up even though you don't want to. And that is mental toughness, actually. Mental toughness is showing up even when you don't want to. And so you come up with little tools. One size does not fit all, but you come up with little sayings, you come up with little tools. I'll never forget an athlete in my sport that I looked up to. She was older than me. And I remember reading very clearly, she hated the indoor bike. Like she hated, the last thing she wanted to do was go and do her aerobic training. So she put a cue card. I don't even think it was like maybe a post-it note cue card on her handlebars. And it said, if I don't work hard today, somebody else will. And anytime she got tired, her head would drop, your shoulders slouch, and staring you right in the face is your cue card that tells you to get back up and go ride or someone's going to beat you. So, you have to figure out what does motivate you when the training doesn't. And you use that like religiously. You commit to those tools to get you up and pursue the things that you don't love, even though you do love your sport.
So in that case, it's kind of using a little bit of fear to motivate the athlete. I used to write a lot of my term papers by midterm. I would have started them halfway through the term. It wasn't for the love of the topic. It was for abject fear of what the end of the semester or end of the term would look like, trying to study and trying to write papers. So I was, I was doing something good, but man, was it motivated by fear.
Good for you. I, on the other hand, sometimes I consider myself to be a procrastinator because I need a little bit of that. I need a little bit of that fear too. And as I've always said, a little bit of that is really good to ignite. You don't want to live in fear. It does not help you be your best self.
What's the research behind that? I imagine it's difficult to quantify. I can't imagine that living in fear is a good thing, but how do we know this?
Yeah, it is the quickest way to burn out because it is emotionally and mentally exhausting. So it is the quickest energy drainer. All of our stress emotions, which could be anger, fear, frustration, worry, anxiety, or it could be the good stuff, the pleasant stuff, challenge, excitement. All that is stress. What does that mean? Energy out. The research then shows, though, that the energy out when you're challenged and when you're passionate, there's kind of like a renewal and an out. It's like it's out, but then it comes back in because you get excited about what you just accomplished and then it goes back out. The fear, though, is just out, out, out at a very fast rate. So it drains us emotionally and mentally quicker of energy than the good stuff, than the eustress. And then when we're emotionally exhausted, well, how are you when you're emotionally exhausted? I know how I am. Can't think clearly. I get irritable. My stomach gets in knots. I come up with all the excuses as to why I can't do this today. Spirals out of control. I lose my heart. I only focus on the results. I say that I'm not good enough. I could go on and on and on. And then I don't think I'm doing a good enough job. And then I feel depressed. And then I feel deflated. And then if I stay in that too long, then mental illness can creep in.
What's the difference between overtraining and burnout? Or is there a
Great.
difference?
Yeah. No, there is definitely a difference, and there's staleness. Burnout, which is the term we most often use, I actually just said what burnout is with those three things. It is a combination, all three: emotional and mental exhaustion, depersonalization, which basically means something that I once really connected to, I no longer feel connected. A project, a person, community, an event, really, like, I was attached to it. I wanted to belong. I wanted to contribute. I felt like I was related to it. I no longer feel that. Depersonalized. And then the third characteristic of burnout is low, big word here, perceived performance. So I don't feel I'm doing a good enough job. I don't think I'm good enough. It doesn't matter whether I am or not. You put those three things together, that's burnout. Overtraining is you still have that. Like you still are highly heart motivated. You still have that intrinsic. You still have self-confidence. You may be emotionally, mentally exhausted, but you're just going so hard, but you're still connected. You're still committed. So that would be overtraining, but your performance is going to suffer because you're overtraining, and it's just energy out. We have no energy in to renew so that you could do good. So your performance still will suffer. And that's similar to stale. Stale is just kind of like you just,
These are
so.
all topics I want to dig into a little bit deeper. It's interesting with burnout. It took me a long time to realize that burnout involves a very large social component. Your connection to the people, when people feel burned out from training, half the time, it's not burned out from training. They're not burned out with the sport. They're burned out with their specific social environment at their club, at their, wherever they're training with their team, or there's some kind of social dynamic. This is my not a sports psychologist talking, so please do tell me if I'm wrong.
It can be. It certainly can be. Doesn't always be, but it certainly can be. It's whatever. Yeah, it starts to feel overwhelming. It starts again to feel you get disinterested a little bit, emotionally and mentally exhausted. You just don't. Yeah, you don't feel like you're. Yeah, it's all of that. So there can definitely be a social component to it. But, tennis is known for being one of the loneliest sports. And tennis is a sport where a lot of athletes experience burnout. So it's not necessarily a social, but it absolutely can be.
Well, a tennis athlete still has partners that they play with to train and has coaches. So maybe it's a problem with your, I don't know, your conditioning coach or your physiotherapist, or there's even solo sports at a higher level are never really done alone.
No, you're just on the court by yourself, for hours. But the thing about the the greatest way to prevent and or treat burnout, it's the same thing, recovery. So that's why we want, especially in our youngsters, but even for us, that's why we want to have some variety in our life. I get that, we're going to make sacrifices because this is the only thing that matters. I totally get that, and that's okay. But it doesn't mean it's the only thing you do. It may be the only thing that matters, but it doesn't mean it's the only thing you do. You want to recover. You want to step out of off the mat. You want to step off the mat and go and do something else so that you can renew some energy and come back in.
I do not care if you don't want to go to Fiji. You must go to Fiji, or you must sit on the beach. It is part of your training.
How awful. How awful. It's really true. It's really true. And then there's this story behind if I take time off, I am I'm not committed to my sport. It's an interesting. I had a conversation with someone a couple of days ago, and he's young. He's 20 years old, and he's going to school, and he has a full-time job, and he wants to take care of his mother, and he wants to take care of his brother, and he knows, I mean, he appreciates what he's doing, and he knows he's doing, a good job, but then he looks at his calendar and he sees that not every hour is filled in with something. He's like, oh, I'm not doing good, and I'm not doing enough. And I was like, wait a second, that hour is now for you to go and play, to go have fun, so that when you do come back to your job and your tasks, you're going to be the best person you can be because you took that hour off to recover. No, 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 no. Like we have to change our story. It is not all go, 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 go. Some of that go is recovery.
So moving on to overtraining, which is of course heavily related to recovery as well. What are the symptoms of overtraining?
I think overtraining is actually more of a physical thing than a mental thing. But if you are, I think it first starts with the physical. So if you're overtraining, your performance is you're gonna plateau. You're not gonna be able to complete the reps. You're not gonna be able, physically, you're not gonna be able to do what you want to do. And then mentally that becomes daunting. And then emotionally that becomes very sad and disappointing or frustrating, and you get angry. But so I first think overtraining, the way I see it in my humble experience, burnout is more starts with the emotional and mental, and then the physical follows. Overtraining to me is more of a physical thing, which then impacts your mind and your emotions. Does that make sense?
Okay. Okay. So then how do you go about distinguishing these two? If I come to you as an athlete and I'm showing all the symptoms of both,
Yeah,
where do you start? How do you start teasing that apart?
I think it's that depersonalization piece. So if someone is overtraining, but they're not performing the way they want and they're frustrated about it, but they still have heart, they still have connection, they still have motivation, they still have desire. Burnout, people who have burnout are really thinking about quitting. I don't care about this anymore. Why am I putting myself through this? That's a huge distinction. And so that's like a tip that would tip me off to which one it is. I don't think you can have burnout and still be as passionate about this activity as you always have been. I do think you can still be as passionate and be overtraining.
That makes sense. Uh, there are kind of a couple groups of symptoms from both of these. There are slumps where your ability, whatever, especially the easily measurable ones, how much you are squatting, it goes down, versus plateaus where no matter what you do, it stays the same.
You can't break through.
Yeah, you can't break through. And at least based on my personal experience for myself and also talking to a lot of people about this, I think it's almost that plateaus are more frustrating to people than slumps. People can kind of write them off. Oh yeah, my performance went to shit, but it makes sense because I was getting over a cold or whatever. But plateaus can be incredibly frustrating for people. Is there something that I'm missing here in the difference between those two things?
No, I think actually, I think you're right. I mean, a slump is your performance declines. A plateau is it just can't get any better. I would agree with you. That's how I see them too. You've hit that ceiling, whereas a slump is actually you have done better. You've been better. You're just having a crappy few days.
So then how do you start working with somebody who comes to you to break through a plateau?
That's where I would definitely call upon, their physical coach, whether it's their, technical, tactical, or their conditioning coach. Really look to see how we can manipulate their training. Sometimes change is good for the sake of change. It doesn't even matter what the change is as long as we make a change so it looks a little bit different, and emotionally that can spark some more energy, mentally that can redirect our focus. But if we're talking sport here, if we're talking athleticism, it's really good to have someone who can offer a little bit of a change in the way you do this exercise, offer a little bit of change in this type of training, so that we are going to intentionally now make a change to see if we can regroup, reset, rebuild, and break through that barrier. For both, by the way, whether it's a slump or a plateau. Plateau, I will also say that recovery piece, you may just need to just chill out for a second and then get back. Give your body a couple of days to recover, and then let's see. And then suddenly, oh my goodness, it worked. I was able to break through the plateau.
Yeah, it's interesting that whole variety piece. I sometimes think that that's three-quarters of the reason for personal trainers. If you've been lifting weights for any length of time, the basic exercise, you could probably make progress forever doing the basic exercises. But then your personal trainer comes along and says, no, 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 we're going to do these upside down reverse leg hanging skull crushers. And you're like, oh, new exercise.
Trying to actually picture that in my head.
Yeah. I may not have described it well, but
no, it is. There is a side benefit and a lot of people, thrive on that. I would thrive on that. I'm not rigid in my routine. I'm not a routine type of person, so I like variety. But there are plenty of people who are really happy with squats, push-ups, lunges, chest press, and pull-ups. They don't care for the variety. They don't need the variety. They stay very happy and motivated and focused. So it really depends on the person. We are not the same. It really depends on the person, the environment, and the activity that you're doing.
Do you pass judgment on the people who always want to do the same thing?
Well, I live with one, so I try not
Oh,
to. No, no, no. It's all good. I embrace it. It's you do you. As long as what you're doing is working for you, you do you. No judgment, just curiosity and an open-mindedness, because maybe one day I'll be like, ooh, you know what? This variety thing isn't working. I need to stick to one thing. I'm open. I am not going to pigeonhole myself. I'm not going to put myself in a category and never let myself come out.
now I've heard you talk about reframing the idea of competition, you versus your opponent, and you must slay your opponent, and you must crush them, and you must get the revenge for the time that they beat you, whether this is tennis or whatever. And you were talking about making it more cooperative, which is a really strange way of looking at it for a lot of people. How do you
Well,
make intense competition a little bit more cooperative?
well, okay, okay. I'm gonna set the stage. I'm gonna make sure I say it the way I want it to say it. I do believe in fierceness. I do believe in staring down your opponent and giving them a show. But I also believe in the sports psychology term. I did not come up with it. The sports psychology term is coopetition, cooperative competition. It's thank you, opponent, for showing up today. I want you to show up and do your best because I'm going to use that to motivate me to do my very best and kick your butt. That's what I mean about co-opetition. The best athletes, the best performers in anything, they don't want to be the best when everyone's at their worst. They want to know that they won because they were the best, because they were better on that day. And whoever their opponents were, they showed up and gave it their best. This person was simply better on that day. I don't want to play you when you're not doing well. I don't want to play you when you're weak. I want to play you when you're your best, and I'm just going to be better than your best. I'll never forget, I once watched an interview with Tiger Woods and his mom. And his mom said, you have to, I actually think I'm going to get this quote right. You have to kill your opponent. And then afterwards, you can shake hands and be friends again. So I'm not saying that I don't believe in this killer instinct, and I don't even like the word killer instinct. I'm fierceness. Yes, I'm going to compete, but I guess how you view your opponent, respect for them. That's what I mean with regards to a competition. And I'm not a big believer in cheating. So, every competition is embedded in cooperation. There are rules, there are refs, there are judges, there are things you can do, there are things you can't do. So it's already a cooperative activity. And I just want you to be a good sports person. I want you to be a good competitive person while you're trying to kick their butt.
I suppose saying, I hope my opponent is on point and brings his best is also a way of inoculating yourself against the possibility that the guy shows up and is actually on point, and now you've got a real battle on your hands, as opposed to going, I hope he's hungover,
Right.
and I hope he's drunk, and I hope he's injured. Right? That
Yeah.
hope isn't really a very good strategy there.
No, no,
Mhm.
no, 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 not at all. You're right. So it sets yourself up for what could actually be. That's a really good point.
Is there such a thing as too much self-confidence?
I believe there is. I was actually just sharing this yesterday, and I actually didn't come up with this term either. An athlete that I worked with mentioned it, and I just thought it was brilliant. We were talking, and then he just came up with this phrase: winning isn't loyal to anybody or anyone. Winning isn't loyal to anyone. So whoever has too much confidence and they think that they've got this, they think that it's an absolute. I'm pretty sure someone's going to take over because they don't have that pursuit and commitment. And a little bit of doubt can be healthy because remember that fear, that doubt can be a motivator, a good one. And it's healthy. And if you just think that you've got this, I mean, listen, yes, you have to believe in yourself. So I do want the confidence. But too much confidence would be, I've got this. I've already won everything. Like, I've got this. I don't have
I'm an
to.
expert.
I'm an
I won it
expert.
last year.
Yeah, nothing more to learn. Like everyone can just watch me. That to me would be too much confidence. I don't know very many people that have that though, but I do believe winning isn't loyal to anyone. On any given day, anything can happen. That is why we actually love competition, because of the uncertainty. The pursuit of being your best self is really about being consistent, right? It's not just if you do a great job once, that's not enough. You want to be a consistent, because that's the challenge. Therefore, consistency doesn't happen all the time. Therefore, winning isn't loyal to anyone.
I suppose we're all mathematical and we knew exactly which team would win, which competitor would come out on top in this tournament, whatever it is. There's not much excitement there.
No.
For anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we started by talking about your stint as a jet fighter pilot. What's next in your ADHD jumping around from activity to activity?
Yeah, one adventure. Now we're not going to go in the air, but we're going to go in the water. I am heading to the Red Sea. I'm going to live on a boat for a week, and I'm going to learn how to wing foil.
Okay, that's where you've got the sort of small airplane wing that you're holding while hydrofoiling at the same time.
That's correct.
Do you do either? Are you a pilot? Do you skateboard? Are you already a foiler? What's your resume here?
Right. Slim, but I'm excited for the opportunity. No, I have been on a foil once before, and I used to like 20 something years ago, I learned how to windsurf. My father used to windsurf, and I used to learn that at camp, and he taught me. So I'm familiar with windsurfing. I suspect it'll be very different, but also some similarities. And so I'm going to use that to build myself a little bit of confidence, and then be very open to learning from the coach.
Talk about a way to stave off Alzheimer's by learning this entirely, it's juggling this while spinning that while standing on one leg. It's going to be a very challenging thing.
Well, I can't juggle, so hopefully I'll be able to wing foil though. No, but they do say, I don't know what the technical term is, the scientific term, but there's a part of your brain that grows only when you're being challenged. So I guess I'm looking to grow that part of my brain next week.
Yeah, I keep on telling myself I'm going to learn Middle English so I can read Chaucer in the original. Hopefully that translates across to some, a big lobe growing out on the side of my brain. The phrenologists will be really confused by that when I get analyzed. If people want to work with you or they want to get more of Haley, how do they do that?
Best place is my website, haleyperlis.com. You can opt in to get weekly newsletters and a free course on embracing pressure. But then there's a little section where you can, as you're opting in and giving me all your information, there's a note section. Write me a note. I get them. I'm the one that reads them, so I will respond.
Okay. And you do in-person work or you do online work with people?
Both. Yeah. Okay. If it's geographically desirable, we can definitely do in person. I'm also, obviously, I fly, so I'm happy to fly. Do one-on-one coaching, do workshops, keynotes to our workshops. I have master classes online. I have a book. So all of that is available at my website. And if you just have a question and you want to get creative to work with me, shoot me a note.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. And I think people will have come away from this knowing something that they didn't before.
Yeah, thanks, Stephan. Thanks for having me.